Normally when it comes to this show, I'll look at classic bosses, levels, and normal enemies seen in the Super Mario series. However, after someone mentioned the flying enemies known as the swoops in the comments section, I realized I rarely cover flying foes. And to be honest, when you think about it, there aren't a whole lot of them that can be found up there. Mostly because a lot of games are side-scrollers, which are very limited. So today we will take a look at these weird bat-like creatures, because it might seem simple to put them in the game, but they can actually ruin entire sections if done wrong. So how did they evolve in terms of gameplay, use, story, and design? Well, let's find out. Now, these odd flying creatures were first seen in Super Mario World in the year 1990 for the SNES, and have been seen in several other games, including mainstream and spin-off titles. Normally, their tactics are quite simple: hanging still on the ceiling, waiting for anyone to come close so they can swoop down to attack you. I'm almost 100% certain that this is where their name came from. It fits so incredibly well with their tactics that it has to be the case. Now, in Super Mario World, they are mostly used in caves, a place where you would expect them to be honest. However, while a lot of people just see them as normal enemies, they actually have quite an interesting role in the game. Now, I have talked about different types of foes before, and this one is a great example of a classic trap enemy. They wait out of sight, and if you don't pay attention, they will get to you when you pass by, trying to take you out. Stuff like this is put in the game so people won't get bored, or run and gun through the whole stage without any resistance. It keeps the game fresh, surprising, and introduces new things in a fun way. Stuff like this is present in almost every game known to man. A good example of this from another game that I recently played is the wolf beast seen at the very beginning of Metro Exodus. Great game, by the way, my lord. Whew. Here they can also attack you out of nowhere, which works incredibly well with the intense vibe of the entire game. However, when it comes down to it, the swoops do the same, but in a less obvious and intense way. Because as you can imagine, this wolf beast jumping on you is a lot to take in and can be a bit of a jump scare. And Super Mario is a game for all ages after all, so of course it's not presented as a terrifying jump scare. So is this the only type of swoop seen in this game then? Well, no, because there's also another type that was never used in the end. Because in the files of the game there is also a blue one, and it acts like the Boo Buddy Swarm. However, there is something wrong with it. They have a glitchy animation with one frame showing half of a square outline and half of a blue spike top. So in the end they weren't perfect. However, I don't know if this was the reason for getting rid of it. Personally, I don't think so, because they were only found in the files of this game. So they most likely didn't like it in the end and never messed with it afterwards. So in Super Mario World they had quite a big and interesting role as an enemy, with their story and design not being that special. Now the next game we would see them in is a bit of a weird one, and it's not really the same creature anymore, because in Super Mario World Yoshi's Island we see a bat creature called a Fang, who are quite similar to the swoops. Now just like them, they attack when you get too close. But for some unknown reason, when they fly, they leave a short dashed line behind them. And personally, I don't really know why this is even the case. As far as I can see, it doesn't have any real purpose. So it's odd for sure. Now after this title, some things disappeared, and that's because the games went into a different direction. The next big Nintendo game would change a whole lot, because Super Mario 64 was set in a fully 3D world all of a sudden. And the thing that stands out the most as soon as you see them again is their completely new design. They look a lot like a mouse with wings and are blue this time instead of green. So by the looks of it, they did take something from the unused version, its color. Now, this design kind of came out of nowhere, and was never ever seen again after appearing in this title. So while it does look good in my opinion, Nintendo was apparently not that happy with it. When the game was remade for the DS, their design was changed, being based off the artwork for Super Mario World and the sprite for Paper Mario. Now they are only found in Hazy Maze Cave and have the same plan of attack seen in previous games. hanging still on the ceiling, waiting to attack. However, did anything change now that it's all in 3D? Well, no, not really. Overall, he still functions the same, but I gotta say that they have more freedom in this title. Normally they would fly down in a particular way over and over and over, never changing really. However, this time around it's different, because it's all set in a more open 3D world. They can now move more freely, but this also makes it harder to defeat them. The same thing kind of happened in the Zelda game with the bats. They also became harder to take down in 3D and more hectic in general. And here in Super Mario 64, this also happened, but they are more manageable than the ones seen in the Zelda titles. Now after this, things would become a bit weird because Nintendo started to make both 2D and 3D games. And when we did see them, not a whole lot changed. For example, in the next one, New Super Mario Bros., their design is the same as in Super Mario 64 DS. And that's the only thing that changed. Besides that, they have the same way of attacking the player. So there's nothing new here, sadly enough. Even when it comes to 3D games, there wasn't anything exciting happening. They were seen even less in those. However, we did see a different version of them. Well, sort of. Because we see different looking bat creatures in Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. Particularly a cartoonish take on the Twilight Princess version. And the two games were in development at overlapping times. So maybe this was intentional? We will never know if this was really the case. But personally, I think it did inspire them in a lot of ways. And when it comes to tactics, they're more all over the place, either following their old ways of attacking or improvising. And another thing they did, which is kind of funny, is that they now laugh if they hit you successfully. So in a way, they became more random and less restricted, as well as more cheeky. But this isn't all, because there's another type of them seen in these games. In icy locations such as the cold portion of Freezing Flame Galaxy, you sometimes see an icy version. These will actually freeze you as soon as you make contact with one of them, and can only be defeated with a fire flower. So there were also new types that became stronger and also a bigger problem, because being frozen in place will make the situation only worse. So in general, they are incredibly different in this game. And the weirdest thing is, we don't even know if they are really related to the SWOOPS, but still they seem to be related in some way at least. And so we finally saw something truly new in the games. After this, things didn't really change a whole lot in the main series Super Mario titles. There was only one small new thing. In the new Super Mario Bros. Games for the home consoles, they started to experiment with some interesting things. One of which is darkness. In World 6-6 in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, we see an amazing example of this. This level takes place in a dark underground cavern and the player uses a boat with a light. And of course, swoops are seen here. But since they're quite fast and come from above, it would be quite unfair to put them in a level without a warning of sorts. So in a dark level with lights, their eyes can now be seen glowing when they're in the dark. So you can actually see their attack coming, if you pay attention. It's a really small thing, but in my opinion, it does wonders for the game. And is a clever way of solving the issue as well. Now after this, it was really over in the main series games. Nintendo didn't really give them a whole lot of love after this. However, when it comes to the spin-off games, we've seen a whole lot throughout the years. They played quite a big role in titles like Paper Mario and Yoshi's Island. A good example is Count Fang, who starts out as a normal enemy and is then enlarged by Kamek. Thanks to this, he's a lot more powerful and has some interesting attacks that are quite different from the normal ones, actually resulting in quite a good boss fight where smaller fangs also help to defend him from egg attacks. And when you look at the Paper Mario games, you will see that they are used as enemies a lot, as well as bosses. In general, they did a whole lot more with them, even when it comes to the story of the game, which the main series titles didn't even care about. So when it comes down to it, they got so much more in these odd and different games featuring Mario and his friends. But there's something that's way more important. In the upper right corner, there are more videos and even playlists with all kinds of stuff. So go check it out, as well as subscribe and click the bell button. I know some of you don't do this, so please do it. I know who you are. Now let's continue. Now in the end, we've seen quite a lot of different things that made the Swoop a better enemy, mostly in the Galaxy and 64 games. But as time went on, developments became more and more rare. it was clear that Nintendo didn't really focus on them anymore. So while they're great enemies in the game with genuinely good tactics for challenging the player in his grand quest, they barely got love. But who knows what we might see in the future. For example, in a sequel to Super Mario Odyssey. Maybe in a game like this, they will do something new with them again. Or maybe they will return when there is a new patch for Super Mario Maker 2, since they aren't seen in that game as well. Which is quite surprising, to be honest. They are quite a well-known and classic 2D enemy after all, so maybe they will be added at some point. But who knows?